Namaskar. Today is July 2nd, Friday, and welcome to Daily Global Insights with Sree and Sree, episode number 195. Let's take a quick look at one of our sponsors of today's program, Cowcoin USA. Cowcoin USA is one of the sponsors of this program. It is a digital currency that is directed towards addressing healthcare, education, and entertainment sectors. We have a lot to cover and shall jump straight to global news. And Sridharji, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel. And let's take a look at CCP after 100 years. A lot of killing and deceit, and China has never considered US as a friend in the past 70 years, says a retired CCP professor. Truth coming out? What do you think, sir?
Well, good morning to everybody on this wonderful July 2nd Friday, and then we await the July 4th, and happy July 4th to everybody in the United States, and looking forward to another great session. CCP completed 100 years on July 1st. It was a celebration, and we covered a bit of the topic as to the Xi's presentation on that day yesterday. So today, the messages that are coming out from yesterday is that what is conspicuous is, it's a century of killing and deceit, human rights suppression as China and CCP pursued the renewed agenda of establishing, I call as one of the greatest economies today, in the prevailing in this universe. The process and approach may be questionable. Having said that, their own CCP retired professor is making the statement that it was never an ally, never a friend of United States. Always the pursuit of China was for only China. It never allows anybody to come in its way as it pursues this ruthless execution. Very sad, but that's the sentiment expressed by somebody from within the party itself.
Negative views of China remain at historic highs as per the recently concluded Pew Research Center that has been shared with the CCP. Was this sampling of across the world, sir, or was it some specific countries?
The sampling was across 76 countries, I believe. If you recall, we had presented, again, the Pew research of the skew in the last 5-6 years, the data some time ago, as to how the curve has shifted from extreme right to extreme left, which is less than 20%, between 15 and 20% satisfaction range, depending on which. The same research, the same people conducted a research and presented. It looks like they presented. Many countries have been included, Sweden, Finland, United States, Korea, Japan, many countries in EU, many countries in Asia. The conclusions come out that, somewhere between 60 to 76% of the people have expressed dissatisfaction at the way CCP has pursued the most recent policy on a number of factors. What could also be influencing this judgment is the COVID situation. The COVID situation has not helped in any way, despite wolf diplomats of China and despite Mr. Xi Jinping and Mr. Wang Xi's provocative statements out in the press. I think that certainly has distorted the views of what people view of China.
And Xi vows to crush meddling forces and any Taiwan independence attempts. Japan and US test air defense in Taiwan neighborhood on China's Centennial Day, ruffling Xi. So the opposition, that is China, that is United States and Japan, are also needling China at this point, just when they are celebrating 100 years. Looks like it was very intentional and purposeful. So is Biden changing tack? What's your thought on that?
Well, certainly it's beyond rhetoric, because this is not from Shinkaku Islands. This is from another island, which is part of the Ryukyu Islands, as they call, or Nanshi Islands, where U.S. has a base, and it is called as the Amami Oshima base, and from where the self-defense forces of Japan, as well as the military forces stationed there of United States, fired surface-to-air missiles and also they placed their truck-mounted anti-air missiles with an intent that in case there's any attempted attack on Taiwan, it can be repulsed from that specific island. It's only from 850 kilometers of Taiwan coast. You can, one can go back and take a look at the maps and figure this out. But it's a very clear case that Taiwan seems to be, at least has emerged, has the red line for Biden, and clearly is the red line for Japan, and it's also clearly the red line for a number of nations in South China Sea. But whether they will execute when the time comes remains the big question mark. And I think, in Daily Global Insights, we covered one of the Chinese generals or so and saying, don't rely on United States, they'll let you down, be ready to organize yourself to become part of Greater China.
And Iran halts IAEA inspection to main uranium enrichment plant while the US and Israel issue veiled threats. And Russian Domestic Security Agency says that it has foiled a plot by ISIS-linked terrorists with plans to conduct terror attacks in Moscow and southern Russia. It killed one suspected conspirator. And with your permission, sir, I will put up the first chart of Congo now. What's going on? Or
yeah. No, please do that. Please do that.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so I think if you take a look at that map in the Congo, Central African republics, it is believed that Russia has got mercenaries helping the government to combat the Islamic forces. This was brought up by the U.S. ambassador to UN, Linda Thomas Greenfield, and said that Russia should not meddle and get out. The fact that there are people from this specific, is ISIS terrorist is what Russia is alleging, and who had contemplated to bomb Moscow and southern Russia, and the perpetrator has been killed. So when you look at the statement which appeared in United Nations by the U.S. ambassador, and then when you look at what's happening in Russia, you can tie the knots as to where some of these issues could be coming from. But the most important point is, right through the last couple of weeks, we have been covering the Sahel region, including the Dar es Salaam entry point for China. If we take a look at every day, we have covered some issue, which is the terrorist-related issue. Everybody knows about, if you take a look at this map, you have the Central African Republic. Then you have in Benin, which is in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is the eastern side. You find that Islamic terrorists have killed the government forces. Again, the government forces are fighting the various terrorist groups. Then we covered Tigray, which is further up in the border between, in the border of the Ethiopia-Sudan region, where again you have these terrorist groups fighting the government forces, and you have a set of issues. So we have almost covered, when you take a look at Ethiopia, South Sudan, Democratic Republic of Congo, going up to Central African Republic, you have covered a whole bunch of areas. Then we can push further towards the west, and we can look at other places. But the fact is that you are beginning to see these incidents pop up, and having, whether this is going to result in a major consequence, it remains to be seen. So you have the ISIS and Al-Qaeda very active in the Sahel region, then which brings us back to another map called Afghanistan, which we are not covering today, but we have covered enough. But more or less, it looks like almost the complete evacuation is complete. Again, Al-Qaeda and ISIS is still fairly active in that part of the world. It means that we have a problem looming, very soon, with withdrawal of the US, EU, and other forces from the region.
And let's take a look now at the United States news. The CBO, I think that's a Congressional Budget Office, sees supercharged recovery as pandemic dissipates and also predicts high inflation in the coming months. Fed President Bullard also predicts inflation coming sooner rather than later. And Trump Organization CFO Alan Weisselberg predicts not guilty to tax crimes. So this is one of the big news items that coming out in the last couple of days, where there was a jury that indicted the Trump organization. But there is a little bit more going on than what's coming out in news outlets such as CNN, isn't it? Can you please help us, connect the dots?
Great. So I think just let's dispense with inflation. CBO is predicting that inflation is on the horizon. So therefore, one should accept the inflation as part of the norm. Again, we'll have a separate fireside as to this whole theory between the market economists and monetary economists on the inflation and the market forces. So Fed Bullard as well is predicting inflation to come sooner. Coming to Trump Organization. Basically, the question of Trump Organization, especially around some of the businesses in the New York and the greater New York area, is that the business practices and the principles that the Trump Organization has followed and practiced is contrary to the prevailing rules around taxation and compliance and et cetera, et cetera. So they went after the CFO, Alan Weisselberg, who pleaded not guilty to the tax crime. But he went first, as soon as he was charged by the jury to be guilty, he went and surrendered himself and said, and his tax lawyers came and said, he's not guilty. Why I'm not guilty? Well, because you're telling me that I'm guilty because I did not pay taxes and I did not disclose because I was given an apartment, I was given additional facility, I was given planes to fly, my children's education was funded, and I was given a whole range of benefits for which, tax needs to be, tax should have been paid or tax paid. So this is the basis of making me guilty. So what is the goal here? The goal is if the Democratic jury and the courts in Manhattan, which are liberal friendly, we have to say that, we have now courts which are conservative friendly, we have courts which are now liberal friendly, because depending on which court system you are, accordingly you will dispense that the judgment gets appropriately dispensed. So he's saying that if they can go after the Trump's organization and his practices, this will eventually they can get to President Trump himself as the CEO and the owner of the business. So that's where we are heading. They're trying to figure out how to get to Trump. And this is just the beginning of this evolution. Just as we had 4 years of investigation into the alleged Russian interference and Russian connection between President Trump and Russia. That went on for 4 years and probably will continue again. So you're going to see the same thing now happen on the business context emerging from New York.
And Supreme Court is ordering charities to disclose donor information. I should read this properly. The Supreme Court has said that ordering charities to disclose donor information violates First Amendment. So the way I read it, sir, is that the charities do not have to disclose who their donor is. Is that correct?
Correct. They're saying it's the First Amendment, which is I have a right to disclose or right not to disclose. You, Supreme Court, you cannot come and tell me as a charity that I have to disclose, because as you all are aware, if they are compliant with the tax norm, they will make the declaration in the tax statement and claim the appropriate tax credit. If they don't disclose it in their tax, that means that it is not a tax deductible organization or a tax deductible charity. So that will not be accepted with the tax authorities. So they say it is a declaration between me and the tax. It's not for me to make my declaration public.
And Supreme Court also upholds Arizona election ballot harvesting laws as illegal over a challenge by the Democratic Party. And this is a very significant ruling. Essentially, what it says is that the state of Arizona is fully authorized to find out if there were violations, and if they have to limit ballot harvesting, they can do so. That's how I see it, sir. Please let me know if I'm understanding it incorrectly.
The Supreme Court in its ruling says Arizona's laws are very clear and very specific. They have given early voting, which starts 27 days before the election day. There's sufficient time for people to cast their ballots. There's sufficient time for people to put their ballots, by postal or other means. So this whole concept of someone else filling up the form for thousands and millions of people and casting it either one day before, 2 days before, on the day of the voting is illegal and violates the laws. So this is how the judgment was written on a 6-3 majority. 6 being conservative, 3 being liberal. So therefore, this is compliant with the rules enacted by the state of Arizona. So therefore, harvesting is illegal. Now the liberals say harvesting is legal. It is part of the norm. You call it as harvesting. We call it as facilitated completion of the voting. So this is where this contention comes in. So in other words, Mr. Sree Iyer, we can have 10 people from the Democratic Party take all the electoral rolls and fill up. Okay, they're all members, fill up and send it or present it and say, these are all registered Democratic candidates, these are all registered independent, we have voted for them. Then why do you need to cast a franchise? Why do you have a franchise to cast? So this is the whole principle, and I think we covered this, which is to say there has to be some mechanism to change this nonsense that is going on in the United States.
And Senator Cotton says critical race theory threatens cohesion in military units, while in Virginia it was at the heart of the PTA clash. We covered this a few days ago. Immigration and Controls Enforcement, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, sheriffs sue Biden over unlawful border policy. California joins Oregon in giving free health care to illegal aliens in its budget. I don't know what's going on with my state. I think Gavin Newsom is trying very, very hard to retain his position. On September 14th, the state goes to poll to recall the governor. California also has one of those unique distinctions where they have, in fact, recalled their governors in the past, Gray Davis being the last one, and now it could be Gavin Newsom joining the ranks of Gray Davis. So let's see how that plays out. Sir, your thoughts on finally ICE and Border Patrol organizations have started pushing back, haven't they?
They have started to push back. I think we have just for the benefit of a number of liberal Democratic Party sympathizers who are also part of the audience. What they are saying to us, to the state, is legal aliens are irrelevant. Illegal aliens are important. Remember, one of the whole reasons why we have Obamacare is for lack of medical insurance coverage, and people are unwilling to take medical insurance, and they all have to be covered by somebody else paying for the Medicare system, which is why it is broken. So now we have all these people saying, from the liberal states, even before they cast aspersions, they have to look at their own economics. They have to look at their own rationale. You can't serve the people inside. So you're going to have a whole bunch of people coming from outside and become part of the Medicare system. Remember, Medicare system is not funded by the government. It's funded by the taxpayers. There's an annuity pool. All the money goes into an annuity pool. The annuity pool forms the basis from which distributions occur to fund the system. So you may be having youngsters, you may be having a lot of people who are paying for their medical insurance, but all their money is going to be taken out in dispensing the cost that is coming from various states in the medical insurance support process, especially under the Medicaid. So when you have all these fellows coming in and being given unilateral medical access, when you have existing citizens who have been denied, it just basically, begs the question: where is United States heading? Is it going towards ballots? It's namely, everybody to be stamping Democrat or voting because you are sympathizing and giving all these kinds of things. That seems to be the trend. There's no economic rationale or sense in this. As far as the sheriff and the others are concerned, their funding has been cut. They have been demanded to do more work. They have no enforcement rights, and it is creating deaths, problems, violence, and skirmishes in the border state, right? It's not where Vice President Kamala Harris visits, where you have a wall in El Paso, but all the problems are in those other areas where you have unprotected borders and where you have surges happening. Live people witness these surges. So it's very ironic. Somewhere at some stage, the intellectual community or intelligent community in the United States must reconcile and say, how we're going to deal with this complex issue.
And next, let's take a look at India-related news. It's time for monetary stimulus is gone. Fiscal package is the only way to ensure healthy numbers for fiscal year 22, argue Mohandas Pai and Nisha Holla. I think viewers, you know who Mohandas Pai is. He has been a guest on our fireside chat. So now, I think he is also saying that you need to start looking at some fiscal measures, such as perhaps looking at the demand side. Your thoughts, sir, as we go on to our next item. Please go ahead, sir.
So I think that there are two charts that has been presented. One is the quarter by quarter chart, which basically shows the effective, GDP in Indian rupees. I think your viewers can all.
Yeah, I have it up, sir. I have it up.
The viewers can all see that. And I think first he has established the point, the basic premise, which is to say that the GDP contraction is not 8%, 9%, 10%. The GDP contraction is 3%. And he has presented rationally quarter by quarter and FY20 and FY21 numbers. And so that just gives the basis, which is to say that for the economy to come back and then step past the FY2020 numbers, you really need some stimulus, whether it is, he says the time for stimulus is gone, but it's more you need a fiscal package. By way of not just purely monetary policy, but not just purely instruments which gives credit, but you really need to put some cash injection and to get the momentum behind. So he has rationally argued it with numbers that tells what the relative story is. You will also see the three important sectors broken: agriculture, industry and mining, and then the services sector. What the relative numbers across the 2 years, financial years, has been, and what needs to be done.
And let's get back to our main news item again. Reliance joins Abu Dhabi National Oil Company to set up a 30,000 crores mega chemical project in UAE. And so this is an important milestone, because now India is beginning to branch out in offering its services to things like building refinery plants and perhaps run it for the UAE for a fee. And this is essentially exporting technology, in my opinion. I think that's a good thing, sir.
It's excellent. I think the Indian refinery and petrochemical production, once 100% is now close to 25 to 29% is held by the private sector. So who are the big people? Is obviously, some of it has been privatized, where you have public participation. And some of it is held by large complexes such as Mr. Ambani and so on. So the fact that the Reliance is now going around the world and offering its capabilities both in the refining as well as the petrochemical projects is a very good indication that there is also a change of power taking place. Historically, some of this used to be US-led initiatives, but it's all now coming to there are only two major players. One is, as you all know, CNOOC, which is the Chinese National Oil Corporation, and then you have the Reliance, which is Reliance and Indian private sector enterprises. Augurs very well, and one of the reasons why the bilateral trade between India and United States jumped, and there's a significant part of it comes from the energy sector or the energy industry, is a reflection of positive strides that India is making in these specific segments or sectors of the economy, not just exploration and production.
And India to get second homemade vaccine, Zydus Cadila, as it seeks regulatory approval for its 3-dose Zycov-D vaccine. So this one is 3 doses, and if I understand it correctly, and we still don't know what is the spacing between those, and why 3, sir?
I think some of these are very protocols related. And as you know, that many of these things is the zycov-D is supposed to produce a structure inside which basically pretends to be what the virus is looking for, and then it attacks the virus, because when the virus attacks this specific molecule, then you find that it becomes the antidote for the virus to mitigate. So this is the essential principle behind this zycov-D. Also, that vitamin D is considered an important ingredient to battle this virus, because it doesn't resonate very well. If you recall, one of the things when the early COVID virus came out, science came out, it's not very susceptible to heat. And it's probably one of the reasons why states in the United States like Florida and so on was able to combat with no masks and so on and so forth, relative to places like New York. So the 3-dose theory will probably converge to 2 doses or 1 dose eventually, as they improve this molecular structure formation inside the body to combat the virus. So that is a banker giving a biotech medical analogy to the question that you have asked.
Left parties of India congratulate Communist Party of China on its 100th anniversary and applaud its governance. So I don't recall seeing the Chinese Communist Party congratulating Pinarayi Vijayan on his stunning success in Kerala elections. Sir, why should these guys bother? I mean, they still want to be, the doormat or what?
I think I set the context in the beginning, which is to say that democracy has virtues and democracy has its sins, right? So has its good principles and sins. So part of the sins or part of the good virtue that comes with this, unsolicited support is given with the hope that there will be some breadcrumbs that would be thrown out, and so people volunteer when nobody has asked for it. And so these are all the left parties, which is to say, we congratulate you, and you are our beacon and you are our icon. Marxism and socialism, 2 principles where you don't need to conduct elections and where you can have a rule determined by a set of people. We applaud, and you are our shining star, because Russia has collapsed. Russia has some form of democracy. The only thing that is now left is China.
And in markets, stock market rallied across the indexes on Thursday. I should say indices on Thursday, that spread across broad industries and energy names driving the momentum. The United States crude oil futures climbed 2.4% to $75.23 per barrel, hitting fresh highs. So those of you complaining about petrol price at the pump in India, it's only going to get worse. Today's markets will be driven by employment numbers, and gains are expected based on the market pundits. And China, India joined 130 other nations in signing up for global minimum. I missed that part. Maybe you can fill it out. What is it that they are signing? So global minimum carbon.
15%. 15%. You remember that Janet Yellen introduced that there should be a minimum 15% tax, not 10%, and tax waivers and so on, which basically disenfranchises or disintermediates tax, what you call taxing nations such as United States. So everybody should have a minimum tax of 15%, and it can be above 15%, or at least minimum 15% threshold should be maintained. How the countries will deal with it remains. Remember that India, for example, has some of the tax-friendly zones where it only deducts 10% tax, or even deducts no tax in some instances. It's called as a tax-free period for a period of X number of years. United Arab Emirates has no tax. It's a zero tax. But there is some form of other taxes they may be coming up with. This is where all these nations have come together and said, we support Janet Yellen in this minimum 15% tax.
And with that, we come to an end of today's segment of DGI. Have a great weekend. Have a happy 4th. Be careful. Stay safe. and also wear the mask when you are in public places. Sridharji, as always, a pleasure signing off the week with you. We'll be back next week bright and early, perhaps not on the 5th. I don't know. Are we going to be here on the 5th, sir, which is going to be Monday?
There would be hardly any news, but we can be here on the 5th, or we can, everybody is celebrating July 4th, but the world doesn't stop. We can make the call.
Towards the end of the week, we can do that. Yes. And thank you so much. And we'll see you again bright and early next week. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend. And again, happy July 4th.